The first phase of the parliamentary elections in Egypt took place on Monday the 28th and Tuesday the 29th of November. Official turnout figures indicate more than 50% of registered voters have cast their votes, with queues stretching up to 3 kilometers at some polling stations. The parliamentary elections are the first of 3 polls scheduled for the coming months. They will be followed by elections for the Shura Council, the upper house of parliament, and for the presidency. The current elections are a complicated process with a combination of party lists and individual candidates. The current phase involved only 9 of Egypt's governorates. There will be 2 more phases before all governorates have voted. Only after that can the final results be announced, which will be in January. The first phase of the elections passed more smoothly and orderly than most people expected. Some irregularities were reported, including polling stations not opening on time and not having officially stamped ballot papers, widely illegal canvassing outside polling stations closing at random times at the individual discretion of the judges presiding in them, and some sporadic vote buying. Apart from these local irregularities, the process during the first phase was reported by many journalists and independent observers to have been without major violations. Many people voted for the first time, and the atmosphere was generally one of excitement. Hu'u.com went to talk to some of the voters to ask their opinions of the elections. The voter in the following clip was asked whether this is the first time for him to vote, why he came, and how he felt about the election.
I did not go before because I did not trust the system in place since the 1952 revolution. I trust these elections because our martyrs died in a new revolution this year. I trust the government is aware that the youth will stand up to protect the revolution if need be.
A voter's opinion of whether he trusts the electoral process and of the campaign.
It is the second time for me to turn up to vote, but it is the first time that I am able to cast a ballot. The previous time I went to the polling station, I was threatened by police and thugs prevented me from entering. These things happened in order to keep Mubarak in power. This time I have full confidence that my voice will be heard, because this time the elections are safe, protected by the army and the police, and the process is sufficiently transparent. There was very little time to gather enough information about the candidates, but I asked my friends which are good candidates, and I think I can trust this one for 80%.
Finally, a voter's views of Egypt's future.
The main issue for Egypt's future is not improving income or career opportunities. It is education. This should be the focus for any country that is developing itself, both scientifically and socially.
The election followed 10 days of very violent clashes between protesters and security forces in different Egyptian cities, which left over 40 people dead and many others injured. The violence ceased during the voting. Some liberal movements had called for a boycott of the elections, which they say are void unless the army gives up its power. Those involved in the protests and their sympathizers argue that all positive developments over the past year in terms of democratization, including these elections, are the result of struggles and sacrifices of the protesters. There is concern for potential attempts by the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces to link the elections and the protests, which would suggest that the high turnout in the elections means the Egyptian people do not support further protests. It is important to emphasize that the elections were not a referendum on the protests, and establishing links between the two is not likely to do justice to the reality of the motivations of Egyptian voters. The preliminary results of the first phase showed that the Freedom and Justice Party, the political wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, got nearly 40% of the votes. The second biggest party is the Salafist An-Noor party, which got over 20%. Third is the liberal Egyptian bloc. A week after the initial vote, there are run-ups in the districts where individual candidates did not get a majority during the first round. The turnout for the runoffs was distinctly lower than a week before, possibly partly due to the fact that people were given a day off work for the first round, but not for the runoffs.